You know, it's not black and white. There's a lot of different gradations of mental illness. In my head. All right, we're out for another walk. I've noticed I really hate the sound talking to this camera. I feel like the microphone makes me sound really muted and really weird, but I can't really do anything about it. It's just the way it is on my phone. If you were to hear me in person, I'm speaking pretty loudly. So I apologize, but I thank you for putting up with it for now. I could take, I have a lavalier mic that I could hook up and use that, but it'd just be very inconvenient and I wouldn't want to do this. So we're just going to roll with the microphone that I have, and I'm going to just thank you for putting up with it. I don't want to be one of those people that talks about themselves all the time because I feel like that's boring. I was just on somebody else's YouTube channel checking it out for the first time today, and I was like, ooh, I hope I never come off that way, because not that the way they were coming off was bad or anything, I just think it's kind of boring when you just talk about yourself all the time. However, I want to talk about myself a little bit in relation to mental health, so that it's, you know, this is the topic we're talking about, and part of my mission here is to humanize mental health, and I feel like I have to be an example of that to some degree. So before I came out here, I was feeling kind of tired. I had something I wanted to do, but then I didn't really want to do it, so I tried to distract myself playing a game on my phone. And when I went ahead and did that, I wound up dissociating. I don't know exactly why, but I wound up dissociating. And then I realized, like, once I finished the game that I was playing, like, oh crap, I'm dissociated, like this, crap. And so I was still in that like fuzzy feeling, that fuzzy, not really connected to reality feeling. And then I realized, like, oh, like I really gotta get up and like get moving and go on this walk, because otherwise I won't be able to do it. So I sat there for like 10-15 minutes, and I felt like a little depressed actually. My body felt very heavy, and I felt like, oh, I'm so unmotivated to do this right now. But I am the type of person where I'm able to push through that right now in my life. There are other times in my life where I've not been able to push through that, but right now I can. So here comes a loud car. Maybe we should wait for it. Anyway, so I pushed through it. I got up. Here I am. And we're going to walk. And for those that maybe haven't seen this channel before, I just kind of go on a walk and I talk about mental health stuff, and hopefully you learn something in the process. I learn as I talk to you, and it's kind of fun. So let's see. I apologize for the wind. So I wanted to talk today about, or tonight I should say, about how we tend to black and white mental illness, and we tend to think that you either have a mental illness or you do not have a mental illness. You either have a disorder or you do not have a disorder. Is that like a thumbnail thing I'm doing there? I don't know. But we tend to think it's an either-or situation, and the case is that that is not true. A lot of the mental disorders in the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual version 5, which is what the therapists and psychiatrists will use to diagnose somebody, they now have different severities on them. I know there are anxiety disorders and bipolar and depressive disorders that have like mild, moderate, severe, which is just a quick way to describe what I'm talking about here. But also, if you go into the alternate section for personality disorders, and I did a whole series here on this channel about the alternate section, they also have a whole like good, really well descriptive discussion of what it means to have a personality disorder and how you can have different levels of severity depending on your own awareness of the personality disorder or how you're functioning in life. Or, I guess what I just want to get at here is that people have different um, levels of disorders, and it's the cliche that everyone kind of says now, it's on a spectrum, but it's true. Everybody has a different level of things, and it's in flux. Like, that's why we can get better, right? Because we can improve our symptoms, and we can see, like, okay, 6 months ago I wasn't able to drive to the store, but now I can at least drive down the block. I may not be able to go inside the store. There's a difference there. There's a difference in impairment when you look at things that way. So that's what I wanted to discuss a little bit tonight. I'm going to keep walking and finalize my thoughts here. This is probably going to be a short one because I'm tired, as I mentioned, but let's go and let's get this under wraps. Okay, so I have a whole bunch of concepts that I forgot that I wanted to get to, so we're going to try to get to them as fast as we can. So we were talking about severity of mental disorders, and something to keep in mind is that somebody with an anxiety disorder, not to discount people who have anxiety disorders, however, if you have like a phobia of, like, let's say snakes, and you don't even live anywhere that snakes exist, it's probably not going to impair your life very hard, and even when it does, it's probably not going to be a huge deal. Depending on your life situation, but I'm trying to be very general here. Now, compare that to somebody with schizophrenia who can't function normally without having to be on medication, and again, nothing against that, of course, but there's a big difference between the two. They both are impaired in their way that they can function in life, but they're impaired differently, and that's one of the distinctions I wanted to make here. Also, a lot of disorders don't come in one package by themselves. When it comes to personality disorders, for example, you often get comorbid depression and you get comorbid anxiety disorders, and you have all kinds of other problems that come along with the personality disorder. It's typically not isolated by itself. You could have PTSD, for example. PTSD is comorbid with a lot of different disorders. So that's another aspect to this that I wanted to point out there. When we talk about mental illness, again, I'm trying to get you to understand, if you don't already understand, I hope I'm not insulting anybody out there, but I just want to make it very clear that, it's not black and white. There's a lot of different gradations of mental illness and mental disorder and mental dysfunction. You could not have a mental disorder and still have dysfunctional ways of relating to people. For example, if we want to keep going with this idea, you could just have really bad boundary control. That doesn't mean that you have a mental disorder, but you could spruce up for sure, and the way that you interact with people could be unhealthy. And what else did I want to say? There was something final that I wanted to say on this, and I'm going to forget what it was now. If it comes to me, I will get to it in a second. If it doesn't come to me, then we're just going to sign off. Alright, so there were actually two things that I wanted to get to. One of them was, we don't know if somebody's on medication and how effective that medication is working for them, and we don't know if they just change medications, which can be a big problem for people, and we don't know if they maybe missed taking some medication. So that's another factor that could influence how somebody's mental functioning could be. And also, for a lot of disorders, and this is kind of what I've been speaking to, there are like low levels of mental disorder, but we may call it high functioning, or, that's not even the right way to say it. When somebody's high functioning, it means like, they may have difficulty with their disorder, but they can go to work and they can do everything fine at work, even though it's really like killing them inside and they're having a really difficult time with it, and you wouldn't know because they're high functioning. So they kind of like hide it, and they don't want to show it to people, because typically when you show people that you have a mental disorder or you have a mental illness or you're just having a hard time, people don't take well to that. You can be fired for that in some instances. You can lose friends over that. You can lose intimate partners over that, which is part of the reason I want to keep talking about this, because it's not okay that that happens. So you've got high functioning illnesses, you've got different medications, you've got comorbid diagnosis where you've got more than one mental disorder at the same time. You have different types of disorders that impair people differently. You could not have a disorder and just have not so great ways of functioning in the world. There's a lot of different ways that mental illness and mental dysfunction, mental disorder, I don't really care what you call it, but there's a lot of different ways that this can show up in people's lives, and I just want to make that clear and make that aware, so when we discuss these things, we're not always using our experience of something to define somebody else's experience. That's what I'm really getting at here, you know. We can look at somebody else in the world and think like, well, I don't do that, I didn't go through it, I have anxiety and I don't act the way that you do, but you really don't know the whole context of that person. So, all right, I am somewhere I'm probably not supposed to be, and I'm feeling uncomfortable about it, so I'm going to sign out here. Let me know how you've experienced this, if you've noticed like a difference between you and somebody else. Maybe you have a disorder and you know somebody else who's had the same disorder. Have you seen the differences between you and that other person? I'd love to hear about that, so leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't already, hit the bell notification if you want to get notifications for all of my videos, and I will see you next week.